Meet Joe. He's the king of physical fitness. He can tell you his body mass index, his resting heart rate, his blood pressure, and anything else related to his body. Joe's definitely in the know when it comes to fitness. Physical fitness, that is. But like a lot of us, he doesn't know much about his financial fitness. Joe just accepts the fact that he's always broke, and he doesn't think there's a lot he can do about it. But there is. When you're talking about fitness, whether it's physical or financial, you have to pay attention to your vital signs and know your numbers. A good way to test your financial fitness is to ask yourself 2 questions. Do I spend less than I earn? Do I have an emergency savings fund to cover at least 3 months of my living expenses? If you answered yes to these questions, then your finances should be in great shape. If you answered no to either question, or you're unsure about some areas, then join us as Joe, our king of physical fitness, begins a training program for building financial fitness. Joe strives for balance when lifting weights. Unbalanced barbells, just like unbalanced finances, create problems. So Joe's financial goal is to balance his income and expenses. He begins by listing all of his income sources. His primary income is his paycheck. He will use his net income, also known as take-home pay, for this exercise. Net income is the actual amount of his paycheck after taxes and deductions have been taken out by his employer. Other sources of monthly income include retirement, public assistance, child support, or any other source of regular dependable income. Besides his paycheck, Joe has no other regular source of income, so his next step is to consider his expenses. He begins by listing his fixed expenses. These are expenses that stay the same each month. They include things like his rent or mortgage, tuition, and credit payments. He has a lot of fixed expenses, so he lists all of them along with their monthly payments. Next, he must deal with the more difficult task of tracking flexible expenses. These are costs that vary from month to month. Joe tracked these expenses by writing down every penny he spent every day of the past month. He knew expenses like gasoline, groceries, and utilities would be significant, but he couldn't believe how the little expenses like soft drinks, snacks, magazine purchases, and eating out added up. Now, Joe has the information needed to total his fixed expenses and flexible expenses, but there's one more area he must consider when balancing his finances. Joe has occasional expenses he pays only once or twice a year. These are called periodic annual expenses. Included are things like repairs, health care, emergencies, car tags, and gifts. Joe estimates his periodic annual expenses could be as high as $1,200. So he'll need to save $100 each month to cover those expenses. Now, Joe can determine his total monthly expenses by adding his fixed expenses, flexible expenses, and periodic expenses. He subtracts his monthly expense total from his monthly income and finds he has $48 left over. Joe's expenses are almost as much as his income, so he has very little money he can save. There's a reason he's living from paycheck to paycheck. He has 2 choices to get his finances in shape. He can decrease his spending or increase his income. One way Joe can cut back on spending is to pay more attention to trivial daily expenses. They do add up. For instance, buying a $1 soft drink every day amounts to $365 a year, and spending $5 a week to rent movies costs $260 a year. Small lifestyle changes can make a big difference. If Joe is to truly balance his income and expenses and be financially fit, he needs to have a healthy savings account. He should have enough money in a savings account to cover, at the minimum, 1 month of his total expenses. For ideal financial fitness, Joe's long-range goal should be to have a savings account that covers 3 months' expenses. However, Joe lives from paycheck to paycheck, and that limits his ability to save. But if he cuts back on spending, he could open a savings account and put away a small amount of money each month. It won't be easy, but he has to use what he's learned to make some tough decisions.
Will that go through this afternoon?
As Joe discovered, the roads to financial and physical fitness are very similar. You have to make a personal choice to become fit and constantly work at it. If you've worked hard like Joe and identified potential problem areas, then it's time to shape up your spending now. Begin by reducing unnecessary expenses and starting a savings plan. Then remember to monitor your financial health by conducting the checkup we've just discussed at least once each year. And maybe, just maybe, you can become the king or queen of financial fitness.